Hey everyone, welcome back with a new lecture with ISO 9001-2015 edition. And today's lecture will be around subclause 8.4, control of externally provided processes, products and service. And this clause refers to purchasing from supplier or subcontracting a service. You need the help, you need the service from another company. So if you need to purchase any resources which are required for the organization to produce a specific product or to deliver a service, this purchasing process shall be controlled by your organization and it shall be under quality management system. And also, if you have a contract with the customer to produce a specific product for him or to deliver a specific service to him, and for some reason you are not able or you don't have the ability or resources to complete that project, you are responsible 100%. And you shall make a subcontract with another company that has the ability and the resources to complete that project instead of you. But you shall have the acceptance from the customer, have the approval from the customer, and this process of subcontracting under your responsibility at the end. So the final product also will be under your organization responsibility, not on this company. First, general organization shall ensure that externally provided activities, whether product or service, conform to the inputs requirements. And that will be by continuous monitoring and controlling for the process in the other company. Or if you didn't make continuous monitoring and controlling and to ensure that they will provide you with the required product or service, at the end that will have an adverse impact on the final product or service, and the customer will not accept the product or service because it's not conform to the inputs requirements, and that will be under your organization responsibility. So the organization shall determine some controls, the controls to be applied to these activities that will be done by another company when these activities are intended for incorporation into the organization's product. If you will purchase resources from supplier, it will be incorporated into the organization's product to produce the product. In this case, they should have some controls. And also, when they will be provided directly to the customer by external provider, but on behalf of the organization, at the end you will be responsible in front of the customer. Or a process or a part of process of this project provided by external provider. If the organization will produce a specific product or deliver a specific service to the customer, but there is a process will be done by another external provider or a part of process that will be also should be controlled also on behalf of the organization. And the organization shall have some acceptance criteria for the supplier or external provider. For evaluation to evaluate and select who is better to do this activity based on his ability and his resources that he has, if he can do this job or not. And monitoring of performance and also re-evaluation of external providers. And also documented information shall be retained, such as procedure for control of externally provided activities. You will write the steps will be followed to evaluate, select, monitor of performance, and also re-evaluate the external provider. And list of suppliers and external providers. You will deal with many suppliers and many external providers to do different projects. You should have a specific list by all of them to have a history who was better to do the activities. Criteria will be based on the requirement for each product or service provided. From product to product or from service to service, you will have different criteria. So you will write the acceptance criteria for the external provider based on his experience, based on his ability and the resources that he has. And the second point, type and extent of control. What are the controls that you will apply for the product or service or process provided by the external provider to ensure that external provided product or activities, product, service, process don't have an adverse effect on the conformity of own product or service to the requirement, to the inputs requirements, to ensure that the service provided or the activity provided by the external provider will not affect the conformity of product to own or input requirements from the beginning. You shall ensure that external provided activities remain within control of its quality management system. These external provided activities by the external provider shall be under the umbrella of your quality management system, within control of your quality management system. So it will be same like other processes that you will perform in your organization. Everything will be controlled under quality management system. And also they shall define both controls to be applied to the external provider and to be applied to the output, to the product or service at the final stage, to ensure that output meet the input requirements. You will have both controls that will be applied to the external provider to ensure that all processes that he will do will be under within quality management system, within your quality management system, and he will be able to provide you with the final product or final service that will meet the input requirement, to ensure the conformity of the final product to the input requirements. And also they shall take into account the potential impact of provided product or service to the conformity of organization to the inputs requirement, customer, regulatory and statutory requirement. The whole process that will be done by the external provider shall be within control of your quality management system, and you shall ensure that all activities will be conformed to the requirements. So at the end, the final product also will be conformed to the requirement, and any risk, any negative effect shall be identified, and also at which probability during the whole process any risk that will affect on the final product shall be identified, and how to eliminate or reduce this risk to ensure the conformity of the organization to the requirements. And also they shall take into account the effectiveness of the controls applied by the external provider. The external provider also will have some controls, some criteria to accept the final product. He will have some controls or monitoring for the whole process to ensure that he will meet the requirement of the organization also. And you shall take into account how much these controls are effective. So at the end also you will ensure the conformity of the organization to the requirement, and they shall determine the verification or other activities, verification or validation necessary to ensure that external provided product or service meet the requirement. You shall also apply some verification at the end for the final product or to the whole process to ensure that output will meet the inputs requirements. And as I explained before, in actions to address risks and opportunities, that risk-based approach, which is a new concept added to this edition, risk shall be identified for all processes inside the organization, and also shall be identified when dealing with the external provider or suppliers. That will be identified. Any risk that may have a negative effect on all processes or on the final product shall be identified, and how to eliminate or control this risk. That will be through audits or on-site visits for the external provider or other ways. And I'll keep this form, risk register form, in the resources. You will identify the risk and the probability of the risk low, mid, high, and also control the actions taken to reduce or eliminate this risk. Suppliers or external providers should be appropriately selected and controlled. Very important point, because at the end you need to get the product which meet the customer requirement, and subsequent inspection for their activities. That's very important. You can take reference from other customers to select or evaluate the external provider or supplier, and also When you will select him, monitoring for him can be, as I said before, by on-site visit and also auditing all the time. So continuous monitoring and auditing for the external provider is very important, and you will have audit reports also for this. Third and last point, information for the external provider. What are the requirements you need from the external provider? These requirements shall be communicated to him to start the work. Organization need to communicate to external provider its requirements for processes, products and service to be provided. What are the service or product or process you need him to do? Approval, at the end you need to approve the design and the quality of the product to ensure that outputs meet the requirement. Approval of product or service. Approval of methods, processes and equipments. What are the equipments and methods used to perform this job? And if these equipments are controlled and fit for purpose or not, and approval of release of product or service. And they shall approve the design or quality of the product. They shall ensure that equipments used are controlled, under control and fit for purpose. And finally approve that outputs meet the inputs requirements, and that will be through verification and validation. And from these requirements also we have competence of personnel, which is very important, and the external provider shall have a personnel which are competent to perform this job. So they shall provide the organization with the personal profile for these persons, which contain educations, and if there is any training related to this job, and what are the experience for these persons. And interactions with the organization also is very important. So there should be easily communication between the organization and the external provider, and that shall be agreed also in the contract. The organization can authorize a specific team who is able to communicate with the external provider or supplier who has the experience to do this job. They shall provide them with the required information. They shall evaluate the processes or the whole processes, and also they shall be able to verify that the outputs meet the inputs requirements. Control and monitoring of performance also will be from the requirements provided to the external provider or supplier, and will be agreed in the contract. This authorized team will be able and will have the authorization to make auditing on the external provider during the whole process on irregular times to ensure their performance, and this audit report will be delivered to the customer to ensure the performance of this external provider. And they will be able also to make verification and validation for the external provider product or service or processes provided from the external provider. They will be able to verify and validate to ensure that outputs meet the inputs requirements, and validate to ensure that the product is valid to be used. That was the end of our lecture for today. Thank you, and see you in the next lecture.